Hello everyone, this is Bodhi, and welcome back to another episode on the Cornerstone SMP. And this one just happens to be my last episode on the server. Now, this is definitely a sad moment because I have absolutely loved playing on Cornerstone and have enjoyed my time with this community immensely, but as I recently announced on my channel, I am soon going to be joining another SMP and am no longer going to be able to play on Cornerstone. But as I have also mentioned, the Cornerstone SMP is not going to be ending after I leave. It is being left in capable hands, and they are actually going to continue Season 1 without skipping a beat. In fact, the server has actually already been updated to 1.17, which is what I'm playing on right now. Now, there's tons of awesome new stuff in the 1.17 update, but I am not going to be dabbling in anything new on this server, as right now I'm just here to sort of wrap things up and record my last episode. And what I really wanted to do for this episode was do a tour of all the things that I've built, but in chronological order, going through what I got done episode by episode. Now, this probably wouldn't be such a good idea if I had something crazy like 100 episodes, but I actually have posted 27 Cornerstone episodes up to this point, so this seems like an absolutely perfect way to go about it. During the past few days, I have skimmed through every single one of my Cornerstone episodes to make sure that I cover all of the important things that we did in each one. And wow, watching my past videos has reminded me of what a fun time the Cornerstone SMP has been. And I also feel like I definitely noticed a lot of improvement in my video quality throughout the series, and I hope that it's only going to get better from here. But anyways, guys, let's go ahead and get things started with what we did in episode 1. And for episode 1, I don't have to move at all because this is what we built right here. This is my original starter house, and it was a fantastic way to try this Nordic build style that I went for in this area, and I think that it turned out pretty well. Of course, it didn't have a giant trophy on top in episode 1. Now, the interior isn't really anything special, but that's okay. I really didn't try to do anything too fancy. It was really just a place to house my items, my bed, and my crafting table, but it did become home to this guy right here, El Trado, who I found in episode 1 as a random zombie villager wandering the area, and I kept him and name tagged him to later be turned into a mending villager. In episode 2, I got things started by building a skeleton XP farm using a design by Il Mango, and anyone on the server was free to use this to get XP. Now, obviously, it doesn't get used anymore because there are far better ways to get XP in the late game, but this definitely came in super clutch in the early game. After that, I added another building to the Nordic village here, that being this storage hall, and at the time I didn't think that this would be the storage room that I would use for the entire season. I figured I would probably build up like an auto sorting system at some point, but I never really got around to that. And to be honest, this thing served me incredibly well. I mean, it's just an array with an absolute ton of chests, but that's all I really needed, especially once I got my ender chest storage sorted. Moving on to episode 3, that was when I first got this guy's trade set up and turned him into a villager that sells mending books for 2 emeralds, and that was absolutely amazing to have so early on, and he has served me well ever since then. Next, I decided to stake my first claim in the ever-growing shopping district with this shop that sells bones. And I absolutely loved the way that this shop turned out, so much so that even when I built BodhiMC, which I'll talk about later, I decided to leave this one up and running, and it looks like we've actually made a few profits. Also in episode 3, I built up this next structure, which was meant to be a sort of a farmhouse, mainly because of what I put behind it, which was these 3 crop fields here. And on to episode 4 now. I first of all built an automatic melon and pumpkin farm inside the farmhouse here. This is another design by Il Mango, and it helped me out greatly, especially with trading with villagers a bit later on. The other thing I did was build this entrance to our nether portal here. It's not the grandest build, but I really like the way that we sort of put the nether leaking into the overworld, and I really like how it turned out. In episode 5, a bunch of us got together to beat the Ender Dragon for the first time, and after that I was able to obtain my first shulker shells and my first elytra. After that, I built this Enderman XP farm using a design by Nembon, and as I was still eager for early business opportunities, I sold lifetime access to this farm to all of the server members for 5 diamonds each. Now, this was definitely a huge step up from the skeleton XP farm we were using before, and since I am going to be leaving the server, it doesn't make sense to charge for it anymore, so the sign now says free to use. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone I know on the server has already paid for it, but from the looks of it, there are definitely going to be new members after I leave, so might as well help them out. Also in episode 5, I was able to get my full set of netherite armor, including the chestplate, which I never wear, and I also got my full set of netherite tools, except for maybe the hoe, which I think I got later. In episode 6, I started things off by building a Wither Rose Farm design by Raiseworks, using my first 3 Wither Skeleton Skulls that I had collected. And if you want to see that, you're gonna have to go watch episode 6, because I am not going to go over there and look at it right now. Every time it gets loaded in again, you have to go through this whole process of drawing the Wither's attention away, which usually results in things getting blown up every time I go over there. Point is, I'm not going over there right now, but that's fine. It's really not the prettiest build in the world anyway. But what I will show you is what we used the Wither Roses for, which is this absolute monster of a Wither skeleton farm. Now, this involved painstakingly slabbing this entire nether fortress so that the only spawns in this area would mainly be on this platform right here. And this is originally a design by Raiseworks. However, I made a few tweaks of my own so that I was able to use 2 crossroads instead of 1. Mainly, I had to add this section down here, which would funnel them into 1 chamber to kill them down below. And in episode 7, I started work on a villager trading hall along with a villager breeder, which I used to populate the trading hall with tons of villagers that have very useful trades for things like enchanted books, tools, and weapons. And after curing all of them, I can get these things at a much reduced price. After that, I decided to build up another shop selling beacons because I had recently used my new overpowered Wither skeleton farm built in the last episode to kill 64 withers and craft a stack of beacons. Now, I'll put a picture of the beacon shop on the screen now because unfortunately it's not here anymore. I did really like the build, but this one did have to be torn down to build BodhiMC later on. In episode 8, I began working on this massive ice farm here, a design by Nembon. Now, I knew I would need a lot of ice because I had started to think about the Nether Hub project, and I knew that I wanted to include ice roads as a way to travel around at very high speeds. And this thing was a massive grind to build, obviously, so in episode 8, I actually only had about half of it done. After that, I built a temporary shop selling elytras and shulker shells, which is no longer there, and I also built this underground iron farm. I started off episode 9 by doubling the size of the ice farm, and in doing so, completing the final product. And in further preparation for the Nether Hub project, I then added a second floor to the villager trading hall so that I could get a bunch of masons that would sell me quartz. And since I had finally finished my design for the Nether Hub in creative mode, I then set to work building it, along with help from Alex, Palithoa, and Shoes with Laces. And I really love this build, both functionally and aesthetically, and it seems like you guys do too, because episode 9 is actually my most viewed Cornerstone episode, having recently hit 2,000 views at the time of recording this, which is pretty cool. Moving on to episode 10, I built up a nether wood farm designed by Raiseworks, as I would need a ton of the stuff to expand the Nether Hub tunnels. However, that design was actually not the one we have currently because that one had some issues, and I eventually had to tear it down and build a newer design also by Raiseworks in the next episode, which is the one we have now. Now at this time, it was also starting to get near the holiday season, so I decided to build up this house right here to begin the Winter Wonderland area where anyone on the server could come and put some Christmassy themed builds. And in episode 11, in addition to replacing the Nether wood farm with the newer one that we just looked at, I also decided to build up these two houses here to expand the Winter Wonderland village. I also decided to add this long nether tunnel that goes all the way from the central nether hub to this portal here, which links to my main Nordic village base. In episode 12, I connected the nether hub to the Winter Wonderland with this tunnel here, and I'm gonna be honest, this might damage your eyes when going through it. But at the end of this here, we have the Winter Wonderland portal, and fun fact, this little hole right here actually takes you to my Star Wars base that we'll take a look at later if you take a right there, because I never added an official connection to the Nether Hub for that. Also in episode 12, I collaborated with Alex to build this raid farm design by Raiseworks, which actually also includes a Hero of the Village feature to get the gifts from them aside from the normal raid farm. And this thing produces a stupid amount of resources, most importantly emeralds and totems, which means that we could survive a lot easier, and also villager trading became a whole lot easier. In other news, I went on a netherite mining session with TNT and used what I collected to create the God Box, which stores a bunch of backup fully enchanted netherite gear. This was also a milestone episode in terms of profits, as I had just passed a stack of diamond blocks. Anyways, in episode 13, I returned to the Winter Wonderland area and constructed the exterior of this Santa's Workshop build here, which I was planning on putting a minigame inside of in the next episode. I also put together a bunch of gift boxes filled with various valuable resources which would serve as prizes for this future minigame. And so naturally, in episode 14, I built up the Christmas minigame using a crazy amount of redstone for someone who rarely does redstone, and it actually worked quite well. I guess years and years of watching Mumbo Jumbo has paid off more than I thought. But anyways, I am not going to go through the whole minigame right now, so if you're interested, check out that episode. In episode 15, I built up this gold farm, and I got this from a tutorial by Speeve, which was on Mumbo Jumbo's gold farm from Hermitcraft, which was actually a tweaked version of Raiseworks gold farm so that you could use looting instead, and then I combined it with the storage system from Nembon's gold farm, and it turned out great. And then to put the gold to use, I decided to build up a piglin bartering system, and for this one, I actually didn't have to go to someone else for the design. In episode 16, I built an auto concrete maker designed by Raiseworks in order to prepare for my Star Wars themed base that I wanted to start working on soon. Unfortunately, this one seems to struggle quite a bit when affected by server lag, so I used this one for a while, but eventually built another design, which was by Logical Geek Boy over here, which in my experience has worked a lot better on the server. In episode 17, I started off by building this super simple flower farm design by Logical Geek Boy to harvest a lot of cornflowers, because I was going to need a lot of blue dye, mainly to craft cyan terracotta. And that cyan terracotta was put to good use as I then began my brand new Star Wars themed base with this build right here, the Echo Base Shield Generator from The Empire Strikes Back. After that, in episode 18, I began this massive custom mountain project. Although in episode 18, it didn't look anything like this, what I was able to get done in that episode was laying out sort of a framework for the mountain, sort of like a skeleton to be filled in as we made more progress. And I continued to make more progress on the mountain in the next few episodes, but what I had turned my attention to in episode 19 was destroying a giant naturally generated mountain. Now, I can't show you guys this because it's not here anymore. Needless to say, it worked out. I destroyed it, but there was a giant hill here that I had to get rid of. And at first, I thought I could place TNT by hand, but after going at that for a little bit of time, I realized that I would need way too much TNT and way too much time to do it like that. So what I ended up doing was building a TNT flying machine designed by Raiseworks and taking the mountain out from above. And I'm gonna be honest, that way definitely felt a lot cooler and got it done a lot quicker so we could continue with the Star Wars base. In episode 20, I realized that there were a lot of different things that I wanted to sell in the shopping district, but I didn't want to create a bunch of individual shops for each of them. So then I decided to build the glorious Bodhi Buys, where I could sell anything that I wanted to and make myself a ton of diamonds. Of course, I don't actually sell just anything. It really only exclusively sells the things that I can produce automatically with the farms that I have, which is still a lot of items, to be honest. But yeah, this is basically like a giant department store that sells a bunch of different items, and I certainly went overboard on the build considering that I didn't even fill more than the first aisle with items to sell. But you know what? I don't care. This was an absolutely awesome build, and I love the way it turned out. I even included a bit of redstone that shows what's in stock and what's out of stock. And so, for example, the blackstone, there's none left in here. It's gotten all bought out. And so the lamp turns off, which I think is pretty cool. And actually, speaking of which, we should probably check our profits. And it looks like even though we've been away from the server for the most part for the last few weeks, we have still been making diamonds off of it. Moving on to episode 21, and this, first of all, marked the completion of the custom mountain, or at least the important part of it. If we take a look around the back here, we can see that this part is completely unfinished. But you know what? I really don't mind. I am perfectly happy with the fact that we only got the front done. Like I said, this is the important part. Although the majority of episode 21 was spent working on this absolutely awesome project right here, that being my roller coaster blaze farm. Now, I did technically design this farm all myself. However, I have to give a major shout out to Logical Geek Boy, as he is where I originally saw the concept of using a roller coaster type system to transport the blazes. He did it on Legacy SMP, and he is ultimately what inspired me to build a farm like this, and I definitely took certain elements of it into consideration while designing this on my own. Unfortunately, right now, though, the farm is not functional. The system was working fine when I first constructed it. However, I realized that there were too many blazes piling up in here and causing lag. So in order to make optimizations to deal with all of the blazes that were spawning, I did a bit of experimenting and messing around with the design, and ultimately it's still left in an unfinished state. However, I'm sure that if I messed around with it for a bit longer, I could get it up and running smoothly again. But since I'm not going to get any more use out of it, I'm just going to leave it how it is. However, aside from the functionality of it, I also think that the aesthetics of it are pretty cool as well. Anyways, on to episode 22. This is when Hicks announced that he was going to be hosting a building competition on top of his custom mountain that he's built here. And so I decided to enter the competition with this medieval inn style build here. And so in episode 22, I got done the exterior of this. Also in this episode, a bunch of us got together to try out a mini game that Hicks had built called Quick Shot. And this was a ton of fun, and I actually turned out to be pretty good at it. I ended up going on an 18-round win streak. And then in episode 23, I added in these two glorious AT-AT Imperial Walkers to the Star Wars base. And I can't take credit for the original design of these. They were designed by a YouTuber named Elcestrus, and I absolutely love the design, but I did make one change by adding various diagonals to the legs so that they don't look like they're standing still and instead look like they are actually marching towards the shield generator, which I really like. In episode 24, I finished off my build for Hicks's competition by adding an interior to it. And I'm not going to show off the whole thing right now because there's a lot to it with several floors above this one. But anyways, it kind of took me out of my comfort zone a little bit as I don't do a lot of interiors like this. However, I am incredibly happy with how it turned out in the end. I also came back to the Imperial Walkers that we had built up in the last episode and added an automatic sugarcane farm inside of each of them. In episode 25, I collaborated with Alex to begin this Mediterranean village at spawn with these first two structures right here, and I really enjoyed messing around with this new build style. I even added an interior to this build here that serves as a respawn recovery room where you can borrow things like tools and weapons and armor to help you retrieve your lost items if you die. And in episode 26, the village really started to take shape as me, Alex, Palithoa, and Hicks all worked on it more and expanded it by adding more structures. I personally am responsible for adding these pathways all over the village, as well as this flower field here and this flower shop, which for some reason is missing a door. After that, I worked with Zinji, Nellas, and Red Stranger on a sewer system beneath the village, and just like the village up above, it is not nearly finished, but it is coming together super cool. Wow, flying all over the place for this tour has actually caused me to break my elytra, which I believe is the first time that's ever happened to me, so time to go repair it real quick. Anyways, let's move on to episode 27, which was the last Cornerstone episode before this one. And in this episode, Hicks's building competition had ended, and I actually won 3rd place, which is super cool, and it's why there's this trophy here that I have not taken down. I also built a 64 furnace super smelter inside of the shield generator build, and this is actually my own design, which I made a tutorial on if you're interested in that. After that, I built what I did not realize were going to be the final additions to my Star Wars base here, but those are these 3 turrets right here and this trench in front of the shield generator. And that was the last episode that we had to cover, which means that this final video from me on the Cornerstone SMP is almost finished. But before this video ends, there are a few things that I want to mention. First of all, some of you are probably wondering if I'm going to release a world download, and the answer to that is unfortunately no. Since the Cornerstone SMP is not going to be ending, it was decided that I should not release a world download at this time. However, I would imagine that the remaining members will likely release a world download when Season 1 actually comes to an end, so you will have to stay tuned for that outside of my channel. And with Cornerstone SMP officially coming to an end for me, you may also be wondering when basically Minecraft Season 2 is going to start, and the answer to that is there is not a specific date selected at this time. However, it is almost guaranteed that it will be starting within a month from now. And to be honest, I probably won't be releasing any more videos until that time when it begins, but I am extremely excited for basically Minecraft, so you can expect more content when it does get started. And with that stuff out of the way, there is one thing that I must leave behind on the Cornerstone SMP, and that is the grave of BodhiMC. Below here, I have made a room to flex both my wealth and my epically organized ender chest storage, as well as leaving behind all the contents of my inventory. And if you're curious, I ended the server with 2 stacks and 27 diamond blocks and 1 extra diamond, which comes to a total of 1,396 diamonds. God, I am certainly going to miss Bodhi buys. However, everything that I once owned now belongs to the server, and it's up to them what they want to do with it. But that is it, everyone, the end of my time on the Cornerstone SMP. And wow, this has been an absolutely amazing experience. I want to say a massive thanks to all of the members of the server that I got to play alongside with. I am definitely going to miss all of these fantastic Minecraft YouTubers, and I hope to remain in contact with them. And I wish nothing but the best for Cornerstone in the future. But without further ado, this has been Bodhi, and I will see you all in the next one.